Like most people in the country, I've seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire, and I loved it. It's a great movie. And as most of you know, it's about this kid from the slums of Mumbai who lives a kind of a tragic, sad life. His mother is killed by religious extremists when he's just a little kid, and then he wanders around with his brother and some friends. He falls in a kind of Oliver Twist way with this rather nefarious person who uses these kids, to beg for money, and he abuses them in different ways. And the hero of the story eventually escapes, but then just lives by hook and by crook and by his own wits. And you see this kind of funny but also desperate life, unfolding. In the course of the years, he falls in love with this girl and then is separated from her. And the story really centers around his attempt to reunite with her. His plan is to get on this game show, the Indian version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, hoping that she'd see him and that they would reunite. Well, of course, he's asked a series of questions in the show, and he knows the answers. One after the other, he knows the answers. And people wonder, how could this kid from the slums, uneducated, presumably inexperienced, know all these answers? So the movie actually opens with this scene where he's being tortured because the police are convinced that he's a cheater somehow. And they're trying to beat this out of him. How do you know the answers to the questions? Well, then he explains to the police officer how he knew the answers. And it was because of odd things that happened to him in the course of his life. People he met, things that happened, weird circumstances. And in each case, I guess that's how he knew the answer to these various questions. Well, it ends in a kind of fairy tale way. He wins the 20 million rupees and he becomes this great hero of India. He's reunited with his girlfriend and all that. But here's what I found really interesting about the movie is the movie begins with the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire proposal of the four possible answers. How does this kid know all these answers? Well, first option, he's cheating. Second option, he's lucky. Third option, he's a genius. Well, we've seen that all three of those are wrong. What's the last one? It is written. And then at the end of the movie, it's displayed, yes, indeed, that's how he knew. It was written. Well, you can talk about fate, you can talk about destiny, but if you say it is written, that implies there's a writer, and that implies there's a person doing the writing. See? I think the movie's talking about providence. The way God writes our lives, even as we lead them. God writing this young person's life, even as the kid was living his life and making his own choices and decisions, it was God who was oddly luring him, drawing his freedom, and giving him what he in fact needed to fulfill God's destiny for him. What struck me as I watched the movie, it reminded me very much of the movie Castaway. Tom Hanks is this FedEx executive who is suddenly stranded on a desert island in a hopeless situation. What washes up on shore? And it's a very funny scene in the movie because what washes up the FedEx boxes from the plane, a pair of ice skates. And people, ice skates? Here's this poor slob on a desert island. What could he possibly use with ice skates? And then come videotapes. Same thing. What could he possibly do with videotapes? Then comes like a little girl's tutu, a little ballerina outfit. So we're all laughing at what a hopeless scenario. But as the movie unfolds, we find that Tom Hanks uses all those things to survive and eventually to build the raft that brings him to safety. In fact, he was given exactly what he needed. Remember, as he's about to be rescued, he's floating out in the middle of the ocean. Up from the ocean comes this great whale. And all you can see is kind of the head of the whale and then his huge eye that looks at Tom Hanks for a few seconds and then recedes into the water. I thought, that's it. That's the symbol of God's providence, of the great eye that watches us in the course of our lives and who is in fact, whether we know it or not, giving us exactly what we need to live the life that he wants us to live. Here's in classical Catholic theology, we speak of the cooperation with grace. God's grace gives us what we need. The trick is to cooperate with it, is to follow it, is to be lured by it and move in that direction. Are we free? Yeah, we're free. But our freedom is a lured freedom. It's a drawn freedom. And it's being drawn by God. You know, I think very often, especially in America, we are closet deists when it comes to God. We think of God as a very distant power, maybe up there or someplace. But that's not the biblical view at all. The biblical view is that God is intimately involved in all that happens. God is the ground of being. God is ordering all things according to his purpose. Therefore, the trick becomes this: how to recognize what's being written about your life. You know what I like too very much about the movie, and I've learned that it's a Bollywood standard thing, is that everyone dances at the end. There's this magnificent dance of all the characters. They're at a train platform. And it's a great song and a great dance. But you know what that says to me theologically? The coming together of everything. Because what thrills you about a dance like that is that everything's in sync. It's all working. Everyone's in harmony with each other and with the music. And that's the music of God working his way through life. And we learn how to dance in rhythm to it. I think that's what it's about. That final scene is heaven, if you want. Heaven is the place where we've all come together according to God's providence. The trick is finding it now, is hearing the rhythm now and learning how to dance to it.